Hey, welcome to a special edition of Behind and Beyond, where we discuss the sermon from this past Sunday. I'm Allison, and this week I get to sit down with Katherine Wolf to discuss developing a theology around suffering. If you haven't yet been able to hear her powerful message from this past Sunday, this is where I would ask you to pause, go back to the sermon, listen to that, and then join us here for this conversation. If you don't already know Katherine works to disrupt the myth that joy can only be found in a pain-free life. She is a speaker, an author of multiple best-selling books, and the host of the Good Hard Story podcast. And if that isn't enough, her ministry Hope Heals creates sacred spaces of belonging and belovedness for people experiencing disabilities in multiple ways, including Hope Heals Camp and Mend Coffee and Goods. Katherine's work has been incredibly impactful in my own life, and it's such a gift to me to get to sit down with her today. Our hope is that you leave this conversation encouraged by God's goodness, even in the midst of truly difficult things. Well, hi, Katherine. Welcome to the Behind and Beyond podcast. We are so glad to have you here and so thankful that you would spend some time chatting with us here today.
Oh,
You're back.
I'm so glad
You're
to
back.
be here.
You're back in Georgia now, but how was your time in Pittsburgh? Did you get to see anything, or was it just a quick in and out?
It was a quick in and out. I did see the lovely hotel I was in. That
Uh,
was about it. No, actually, we ate at this really cool restaurant on the way to the church. I think it was called Matera.
yes.
It's like the best sandwiches. Oh my gosh, we loved it. It was delicious.
Oh, good. Well, you got at least a tiny, tiny taste of Pittsburgh, I
Oh,
guess, while you were here.
the restaurant was, like, adorable. It was like a food shop inside with, like, really yummy products, and it was, like, precious. Loved it.
Oh, great. Well, I wanted to start today really by talking to you or sharing with you, if you are okay with it, a little bit about how you have personally impacted my life.
Aw.
So I would love to just share with you. I grew up, I've kind of been around disability my entire life. I grew up with my grandfather who's blind, but I hadn't really wrestled with like, who is God and how does he interact with disability? And how does this all come together in my faith really until probably about 6 years ago when my children was walking through a diagnosis. And it was at that time that really it just felt like, the floor was kind of like ripped out from under me. And suddenly there was all of these questions about how do I think about this as a Christian? And I had been in church almost all my life. I'd gone to seminary. I had been working in vocational ministry, gosh, probably about 10 years at that point, and suddenly felt like I have no answers. And a lot of the resources I would normally have turned to for theological help, there
Right.
was almost nothing on disability. There'd be
Yeah.
entire sections on here's the doctrine of man, and nothing about man would say anything about disability. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I found myself really struggling with, like, I could find a lot of secular resources, but when I tried to think about this from how do I think about this in a gospel way, it was very difficult. And so I found myself late at night, like, Googling things like God and disability, and that really led me to a lot of your work and your website. And so
Yes.
I get, like, emotional even saying it because you are a huge part of me beginning to, develop my own theology of disability
Mm.
and make a huge shift in the way I see God and the world and the way he interacts with the world. And so I just want to start by thanking you for your work.
Oh gosh, thank you for saying that. It's such a profound gift to have anybody tune into anything I'm thinking and processing and learning in. And yeah, there is so much that is not in the Christian lexicon about disability, and it should be.
Yeah.
People with disabilities are image bearers. Like, let's start
Yeah.
there. I mean, goodness, it's wild. I agree.
Yeah. So I'm curious about that for you. How did you go about developing a theology of disability? Was it just kind of trial by fire, or did
Well,
you feel
yes, it very
like
much
where did you start?
yeah, so, it's interesting because I acquired a disability at 26 after the massive stroke, um, being thrust into the disability community overnight meant
Yeah.
that it took years to process, to grieve, to really learn what disability looks like in our world. And it was being in proximity to other people with disabilities where I started to become increasingly curious about, so what does God have to say about disability, and what is
Mhm.
truly good theology when it comes to disability? Because as we know, there's a lot of bad theology out there when it comes to
Mhm.
disability. There's plenty of camps that would say, unless you've been healed, you you're still waiting on your healing from God before you should really talk about anything
Mhm.
in the disability realms, which is so misguided and obviously inaccurate. But that's really kind of the baseline for many churches and many Christians would be, um, you need to pray it away, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, you must have some unconfessed sin in your life or something just tragic and bizarre. And people and the families of people suffering with disabilities are already enduring enough. They don't need to be fed lies that are, I mean, I don't know what the point is, but Christians just need to back up and hold their tongues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly.
So for people, so I think I mean I kind of was trial by fire too in thinking about
Right.
this
Yes.
when it kind of came into my life. But for maybe people who are listening who are thinking, yeah, I do need to think about this. I haven't thought deeply enough about what God says about disability and the way he um interacts with the world, a broken world. Do you have any suggestions of where to start? Besides, obviously, all of your, I mean, I started with your work, so that's what I would recommend. But
Oh,
any other
well,
places you'd suggest?
you're sweet. They're much smarter, more thoughtful people than me. But tune into the work of Henry Nouwen for any amount of time, and you will learn so much. I mean, all of his books are phenomenal. Henry Nouwen is one of the greatest disability theologians out there, in my opinion. Um, Currently, the work of Amy Julia Becker, all of her work in disability realms is amazing. She has a podcast called Reimagining the Good Life that I would highly recommend your
Hmm.
listeners tune into. She's brilliant. On the work of Dr. John Swinton, a fascinating professor in Scotland, just doing amazing things, specifically in the intellectual disability space. And
Yeah.
the combination of faith in Jesus and disability seems like it should be a real natural fit to talk about, but it's not.
Yeah.
And it should
Yeah.
be. I've been very personally inspired by the work of Johnny Erickson Tada through the years. You may know that name.
Hmm.
She's
Yeah.
a woman who became a quadriplegic after a diving accident, and she just does so much glorious work um in the disability community, spreading the gospel, and she's amazing. So those are a few of my favorites.
Yeah. You actually, I just listened to your podcast recently with Dr. Swinton. You just got to, and you had a great Scottish accent on that too. I
Well,
heard you
thank
mirror
you.
his.
I was very disappointed it did not sound more Scottish, but thank you.
I'm practicing mine as well as I read to my kids at bedtime. We've been working on our accents.
Oh, good.
Um,
Love it.
yeah. It is interesting. I read an article recently that said 1 in 4 Americans are living with a disability currently. And
Right.
so I think that's a wild number also, and that's just currently. So I think if we make it very far in this life, most of us, if not all of us, are going to experience disability in our own bodies
Well,
in this
exactly.
lifetime in some
Exactly.
capacity.
They say in disability circles that if you are able-bodied, you are temporarily able-bodied. But
Mm,
if you live long enough,
yeah,
you're likely going to become a person living with disabilities, that aging is gonna kick in, and yeah, you're probably gonna
yeah.
end up having disabilities.
I think we don't often think that way though, and I wonder, it feels like 1 in 4, that's if I think about the church, that means this is a huge discipleship issue within the church.
Absolutely. And everybody says, "Oh, well, there's not many disabled people at my church. I just don't have many people with disabilities in my life at our church or otherwise." I'm like, "That's because spaces aren't made for people with disabilities to get into easily and enter in easily." Is there
Mhm.
so much stigma associated with disability, and there's difficulty many times, especially at churches, of even getting into the space. It's really sad.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, so our church is in a sermon series on James, which you know because you were a part of, and the first half, like, the first half of it, we're just focusing kind of on that key verse of James 1, 2 through 4. "So count it all joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, for you know that testing of your faith produces steadfastness." I imagine that "count it all joy" phrase could be used at times in a way that could feel, um, out of context or maybe trite to someone suffering. Like, I imagine when you're walking through a stroke and someone says, "Well, count it all joy."
Right,
That's not a super helpful thing in the moment. And
right.
I really appreciated what you read. I wrote it down because I wanted to get it right. But you read in your sermon out of your new book, Treasures in the Dark, and it said, the first step in accepting your circumstances was to allow those circumstances to bewilder your mind and break your heart. Um,
Yes.
I'm curious what you think the role lament and grief play in in counting it all joy, and are they antithetical, or do the two need to come together
Why,
in
they
order to be able to count it all joy?
absolutely, of course, they tremendously coexist. You must have both. Both are a part of the whole process. I believe you cannot ever truly count it joy without first grieving what is lost.
Mm,
Absolutely. Lament is a huge just part of the whole cycle of hurting and hoping in this life. And I believe true joy is only able to be experienced when there has been a grief and lament. That
mhm,
is a part of the process. The beautiful thing
mhm,
that I go on to say in that part is that you must start with lament, and you won't stay there, but you must start there. I think it's the beginning of accepting anything in our lives is grieving what isn't in the story that we
mhm.
thought would be.
Yeah, and you had even said in your sermon it took you probably about 5 years to feel like you were even coming up from air, maybe out of that grieving and lamenting process.
Exactly.
Did that
Yes.
did that I guess my question is, so after those 5 years, did it feel like, "Okay, that process is done, and I can set that aside and move forward?" Or is it still, are there still moments of grief and lament? How does that play out, like, realistically in your life?
There's still moments and always will be because all is not fully my memory isn't erased from what I've
Yeah.
been through, and I have scars from what has happened to me. I believe scars are the best part. The scars are the proof that we lived. And yet, there are in our stories a low grade sorrow that can
Mhm.
remain, and it has for me. That as much joy as I have in the Lord, there is a low grade sorrow that has remained that,
Mm.
oh, this was not what I thought it would be when I was a little girl. And
Yeah.
I think that will be lifelong, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I grew up believing that everything has to be redeemed this side of heaven. Like, I must fully believe that everything that has been taken away will be redeemed right here, right now. And now I recognize that's not accurate. There is
Mhm.
full redemption in heaven. It may not be while we are on earth. One day there will be no more tears. One day there will be no more crying. But that's not today.
Yeah. What do you do when like, are there any I was talking to a friend, who is suffering through some things, and she wanted to know really, what do you do when you get into those moments of despair? Also, there's obviously maybe something about prayer in your mind, but also are there any physical things you do? Like, how do you kind of, or do you just sit in it? What advice would you have for someone who's kind of working through cycles of grief and when the
Yeah,
moments feel
I
really hard?
think very much situational.
Yeah.
Normally, if I'm like, if it's not the middle of the night, for sure, I would, if I'm in a moment of feeling really, really low, um, very real. I'm gonna go outside, take off the sunglasses, let vitamin D hit me in the face really hard, and I'm going to intentionally think of a small list of things that are so good about my life right now today.
Mm.
So, for some reason, I've connected sunlight, nature, gratitude for just a couple things that are decidedly good in this moment of hard, hard stuff. And I think that's really done something deep. It's like
Mm.
cultivating gratitude does change the brain. Like, it changes. Another thing I will do is make a phone call to someone who I know is an empathetic listener, and I will just unload what's going on, how I'm feeling. And I will say at the top, I don't want you to speak into this. I don't want to hear a single platitude. I cannot handle it. I just want to tell you the real and the raw for 5 minutes. And no one's ever said, I'm so sorry. No, they're here for it.
Yeah.
And I will make it very clear, please do not ask me for a prayer request at the end. There's way too much to pray for. Please don't leave me feeling naked by this moment. Leave me
Mm.
feeling whole. And I'm
Mm.
almost training my dear friends to do what I feel like we need to do for each other, which
Yeah.
is be deeply empathetic listeners who are not trying to make it okay,
Yeah.
and put a Jesus Band-Aid on a bullet wound. I don't want that. Now, I want support, and I want that interpersonal connection, and I want to talk it out. But I don't need a lot of feedback in the moment. That will come
Yeah.
later. Right
Yeah.
now, I just need to get this out.
Yeah. But also that's so kind of you, like, because it's clear. You're being really clear with your friends, I think, about what you need. And like, I like how you said you're kind of training them how to enter
Right?
into that with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Do
it's
they,
very hard.
yeah. So when you said, help me feel whole at the end of this conversation, is there what specific, like what helps you feel whole at the end of a conversation?
When there's not a lot of feedback, when there's
Yeah.
not
Mm.
a lot of, we know in all things God works for good. You're like, I know, but I don't need that right now. So
Yeah.
tell me that again in a year. Like, not
Mm.
next week, a year. And let me feel like I was able to be honest with you. And also leave me feeling okay with Jesus. Like, I need to know by the way you hold the story that you're in this with me because he's in this with me,
Mm.
and he's not leaving and neither are you. And I think that's the gift we give each other in the body of Christ.
Mm. That's so interesting. I love that because I think sometimes there's a tendency to think, well, to make you feel good about Jesus, I have to kind of like prove it to you
Right,
cognitively
totally.
rather than
I need to be a star for Jesus, so he gets
yes.
some
Yeah.
good PR.
Yeah. Rather than like, no, Jesus can hold this. And so because he can hold it, I can hold it too for
Right,
you.
and
Is it good? Yeah.
that actually is good PR for Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I think so. Your third treasure, I've just heard in so many every pocket of Northway I've been in this week, everyone's talking about your sermon and what stood out to
Oh,
them. And so it's been
that's
like
sweet.
really beautiful to talk about with people. For me personally, the third treasure really hit home. And that was the one where you were talking about, I can see my suffering as a curse on the people I love or as an inheritance of breathtaking value. And
Yes.
that, I mean, that kind of, that wrecked me. My mother is living with ALS. And so I know, struggles a lot with feeling like a burden,
Of
and I thought it
course.
was so beautiful how you reframed that, like, that just
Oh.
how the Lord would know she would walk through this. He also knew I would be her daughter and my father would be her husband, and, that we are just we're in the story too with her and get to walk alongside of her, and there are hardships, but the call of a disciple is to bear one another's burdens, and what a beautiful gift I feel like I get to, like, be her daughter and walk with her, and it was a
Oh,
beautiful reframe.
wow. You must be such a special human being. I, across the board, have found the typical able-bodied child or sibling of a person living with disabilities is just a different level of human being. Their character is just different. You're an amazing species, the person. And I would say truly, I mean those words, that it is a glorious inheritance that I get to give my children. It is not a curse on their lives. I really feel
Um,
like in my lowest moments of feeling like this terrible burden, the Lord woke me up to the fact that I am supposed to be on earth in this exact condition. And the people in my life who love me are meant to be here as well with me
yeah,
in the story. Thus, I am worthy of being taken care of, and it is to their gain to
yeah,
have to take care of me. It
yeah,
develops
it's
them.
oh, for sure, treasures, I think. I think even I thought as a mom thinking about I mean, what mom I also have 2 boys, so what mom hasn't at times thought, like, "Oh, I'm gonna mess up my kids with my stuff," you know?
Absolutely. Of
So,
course.
it's just but I was thinking about I had a professor in seminary who was walking us through Genesis, and he had said this thing that has always stuck with me. He had said, "We think about the pain in childbirth that Eve is going to experience as the physical, kind of temporary birthing process. But the pain in childbirth is actually that you are bringing your heart out into the world and it is now going to walk around and live in a broken world. And so it's going to experience this child that you love is going to experience brokenness. And then
Yeah.
that's the true pain of childbirth is that your children are going to so whether it's your own brokenness or the brokenness around them, they're going to experience it, and have to
Yeah.
interact with that.
That
So
is so true. Gosh.
yeah, and so I was thinking about that even a little bit around you mentioned this briefly in the sermon, but I've heard you talk about it in other places about the idea of invisible wheelchairs and just
Yeah.
this idea. I think this is something where I saw your thinking was very different than a lot of the secular stuff I was reading about disability, when I was beginning to kind of form my own theology around this. And I think this is a uniquely Christian view, right? That we all have brokenness. We live in a broken world. We all have
Yes.
brokenness. You use the language invisible wheelchairs. Since you didn't get to talk about that a ton in the sermon, I'd love if you would just expound upon that idea here.
Sure. Absolutely. I think the Lord has revealed to me that we are all disabled. Anybody with any kind of disability or not, that is in their outer physical body, we all have invisible wheelchairs. We have guilt and shame and haunting memories and just bad stuff is in the story. Sin has come onto the scene. We live in a fallen world. And so every one of us is carrying wheelchairs internally.
Mhm. Mhm. How do you think we should, as believers, like, engage with that, as we're, like, interacting with other people,
Yeah, I
in
think
this
with
world?
such tenderness, with a deep camaraderie, an
Yeah.
incredible compassion, and an empathy that we're all in this life together and it is hard. And we need to do the work of being a part of each other's healing.
Yeah. Yeah. I, want to know too, something I just know about you because of all of the stuff I've listened to from you talking. I feel
Yeah.
like scripture just flows out of you when you're talking. Like, it is just I can tell it's, like, rooted deep in your heart, and, you often, when you speak, are just alluding to sections of scripture. How is there I wonder if there is a key verse in your life that kind of most grounds you, or maybe even one right now that you feel like the Lord is just has placed on your heart that you're meditating on?
Oh, well, there's so many, my word, it would be hard to choose. Hmm. I mean, I guess I should go with the one I talked about on Sunday at your church because it is among my very favorites. Isaiah 45:3, that he gives hidden treasure in the darkness, which is stored in secret places, so that we may know that he is God, the God of Israel, the God who summons us by name. I just think that verse is just so beautiful, that there is good stuff for us in the darkness and that he is summoning us by name, even in whatever darkness we're walking through. He's with us and he's
Yeah.
not abandoned us when we're in the pit.
Yeah. I know about on your podcast that you like to close every time with a specific question. So I thought today we could flip the script and I could ask you that question if that's okay. Do you know what question? You know what I'm referring to, I assume.
Of
So,
course, what's good in
yeah.
your story? Yeah, of course,
Well,
sure.
I'll ask it for those who haven't heard it before. But what is good in your story, and what is hard in your story, and how do you live in the tension of both the good and the hard story, and maybe even currently today?
Yeah. What is good in my story in this moment is that I don't have any like current medical crises happening. No recent surgeries, no terrible fall recently, nothing like that. So while I do
Hmm.
have an ongoing neurological condition, there's no symptoms currently. So all is well with my health, and that is a decidedly good thing in my story. And that really contributes to like 8,000 other good things. I travel and speak all the time. I get to be a part of this incredible ministry. I get to be with my family and not be in the hospital. I mean, it's a big deal. Um, what is hard in my story? I mean, there's plenty of hard things, and I got some pretty significant drama in my family of origin and just hard life stuff. Probably won't go into other people's stories because that's not my story to tell, but
Sure.
similar to every human being on earth, there is just real hard addiction type deals that have wreaked hell on relationships. That's really hard. But for a personal one, for me, I guess that is personal because it affects me.
Yeah.
But the balance is hard. I don't think work-life balance is real, so who
Okay.
knows? But I travel and speak a lot. We opened a coffee shop here in Atlanta for people with disabilities. We have a camp. I write books. I'm a mother. I have kids. So it's all kind of a lot. It's everything all at
Yeah.
once. And
And
that's how life is.
it's
Yeah.
May-cember. Do you experienced that, the craziness of May and school with kids?
Right?
Yeah.
It is no
Yeah.
joke. Yeah, it is the last day of school is tomorrow. So
Oh.
hallelujah. We're at the finish line. Hallelujah.
That's amazing. We have a couple weeks to go here still,
Oh,
so
do
we
you
are all
also
limping.
Pittsburgh schools get out later, I guess, than Atlanta schools? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
Little
think
side
it's
note, are
colder.
you friends with Maddie and Cole Fleetwood? Do you know them?
Do you know, I don't know them well. I actually met them the very first day at Northway, I believe, because I just happened to be at the city campus, that day, and he walked in with a Hope Heals hat on, and so I was like, "Oh, you like Hope Heals?" And this was, I guess, a couple of years ago, and so we struck up a conversation, that day, so but
I
haven't
love
don't
that.
know
Well,
them
they
well
are
since then.
very,
Yeah.
very dear to us, precious people, long-time volunteers at camp, and we're so close that when they got married, we flew to Pittsburgh and my husband officiated their wedding. So
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
been to
that's
Pittsburgh
awesome.
before. It's so cool. I love them. I love that they go to your amazing church.
Yeah. Well, we are so thankful to have you here. And we're thankful for all the work that you are doing in this community and for the work you've invested here at Northway too this year. It's been really great to get to
Uh,
hear from you. And I know that you've impacted a lot of lives here.
Listen, the Disability and Faith Conference was A plus. I mean, you
Wow.
guys, it was stunning. It was beautiful and just such an important issue for the church to champion, and your church is doing it
Yeah.
so well. And then most recently being back with your church was so wonderful. Y'all are just
Mhm.
incredibly thoughtful, generous, kind Christ followers. So it was a joy to be with y'all.
Wow, thank you. My mom actually got to come to the Faith and Disability Conference. They live in West Virginia, but she came up for it in order to be able to hear you. And so
Oh,
we were there
oh my
together. It was really
goodness, I
special.
would have
Yeah,
loved
thanks.
to meet her. Does she use a wheelchair?
She does, yeah, she's fully wheelchair bound pretty much at this point, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. What a gift, that she was there. You
yeah.
need to tell her about our camp. She needs to
I
come with her daughter.
I've been trying, yeah, maybe this is I'll tell her, you directly have invited her now, so
I
maybe this will
have,
get her there.
and to all your listeners, there is a contingent of amazing folks right there in Pennsylvania, but way north of Pennsylvania, coming down to Alabama in the summer to camp. It's free. It is a glorious week of fun for the kids and teaching and fun for the adults. And it's just pointing families who are dealing with significant weariness, isolation, financial burden, everything to enjoy just a free vacation together. So
It's amazing.
definitely apply to come if you are a camper and would qualify, or apply to be a volunteer and serve. We actually have
Yeah,
waiting lists for both this year, which is
that's
crazy
amazing.
because the volunteers pay to come. It's nuts.
Yeah, oh, that's
But
amazing. That's amazing.
really, really special. Hope Heals Camp. Look it up.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Catherine. You are special to our church and our community, and we're so grateful to get to have you here
Oh,
with us today.
I'm so glad to have gotten to have this conversation with you. I just love your sweet congregation.